Get to the other big story, and that's brewing in the telecom space. Bharti and Reliance Jio have both announced a tie-up with SpaceX, via which they will offer Starlink satellite broadband services to their subscribers. Now, this partnership, in principle, can expand connectivity to underserved regions where the traditional networks are limited. So what does it mean for Bharti and Reliance Jio? One, increased revenue opportunity. Earlier, Starlink was seen as competitors. Now there will be collaboration, which means some sort of a revenue sharing agreement. Bharti, Airtel and Reliance Jio can sell Starlink solution through their retail stores and their online platforms. Also, the earlier fear was that Starlink will disrupt Bharti and Reliance Jio's existing terrestrial services. But analysts we spoke to say that's unlikely to be the case. Starlink, in fact, will be a complementary premium satellite broadband services, which will be complementary to the existing broadband or fixed wireless service that these companies offer. Now, the big question is, can SATCOM, that satellite communication, become mainstream in India in the medium term as it's been globally? Now, here it all boils down to affordability because Starlink is a premium service. Now, the IFL analyst we were chatting with earlier told us that Starlink pricing in the US is approximately $80 per month. Even in a developing economy like Kenya, it's priced at $10 per month. And there also you're going to get limited GB, like, data, 50 GB of data, which is still very expensive. In India, ARPUs are averaging $3 per barrel. If you look at broadband services, ARPUs are at $5, barrel, $3 per month. And for broadband, you get at $5 dollars per month, and you're getting unlimited data. So it all boils down to pricing. So that's going to be, one of the key things to watch. Most say that, the revenue uptick may not be that much because this service will target select businesses or very small businesses who have that requirement. Also, another important thing to note that it's not an immediate revenue spinner. The launch is not immediate because Starlink needs government approvals and spectrum allocation in India still needs to be done. So that's the quick brief about the developments taking place. But let's invite Sanjay Kapoor, entrepreneur, TMT advisor, ex-CEO of Airtel India and South Asia. He's joining us on the show now. Sanjay, always a pleasure to have you on CNBC-TV18. This is Reema here. So first, share your initial thoughts. Both of them are partnering with, Starlink. I'm sure you also have read the headlines, right? The whole of last year, there was public sparring between the two. They were concerned about Elon Musk's entry into India, and now they've joined hands.
Morning, Reema, and good morning to all your viewers. Absolutely a pertinent question, and where we stand today actually emanates from the cardinal rules of telecommunications. Telecommunications is a service which is based on interoperability. It is an industry which over time has demonstrated to the world that collaborating is equally important as competing, and therefore you see tower companies and many other assets really shared between operators. And finally, the telecommunication service providers have to be technology agnostic. They cannot be married to any technology. It's 5G today, it could be 7G tomorrow. It could be satellite today, it could be something else tomorrow. And therefore, they will look at all possible avenues of reaching out services to their customers. And that's exactly what is happening in India right now. It's not one bit of surprise to me that both Jio and Airtel have tied up with Starlink, and they will do it with other service providers on satellite as well as time passes. Now, the challenge is that with these services, they want to reach out to those customers who are unserved, where terrestrial networks don't reach. This could be because of a couple of reasons. First of all, those areas where the government of India, because of security reasons, doesn't allow you to go. It could be because the terrains are really difficult and therefore you don't have the wherewithal to support those networks. And the last is the commercial returns on your investment. So there's a lot of ground in which the amount of investment that you have to put in doesn't return your capital. And, the government over time on the universal services obligations has not been able to really move the needle on serving such like customers. So I think absolutely right. These are complementary services which will probably reach out to the ones who are not served. But the dilemma in India is, in a market which is so low on ARPUs, will an individual customer residing in such far off places, will they be able to afford the services at the prices that they operate even in Africa? which is subsidized, I believe, it'll be very tough for those guys to afford these sort of services. Therefore, I think rightly, if you read Airtel's statement, and if you even allude a little bit to what Jio has to say, I think they're concentrating on serving the so-called B2B market, where either it's a healthcare service which is supported by the government of India, or there is some offshore drilling, or there is some other excavation that's happening on behalf of a large corporate, so that there's somebody who can afford and pay those. And the only thing is that they are deprived of those services today because the terrestrial networks have not reached there. So I don't see these services to be a threat. I think they're complementary, and smartly, the existing operators have tied up and also sell their CPs from their so-called outlets and shops, because they want a complete check on how fast the services are moving, what's happening, what types of customers. They want to dig into the whole knowledge, and they don't want to be surprised at any moment. Your last question, it is always the fear of the unknown, that when somebody comes in, and especially with the stature of Elon Musk, then you fear that, can he be more disruptive than what we can, imagine today? And I think that's the fear. But having been in this industry for that long, I don't believe they can ever disrupt the terrestrial networks, because India has a very strong regulation around who can provide these services and who can't. And I don't think the laws will ever permit the satellite providers to actually dethrone or overturn, any one of these operators.
Sanjay, all points very well put. You said that it's unlikely to take off, with regular consumers, B2C. The real opportunity could be B2B, which is what even the press release seemed to allude to. So how big is the B2B opportunity? What kind of revenues can Jio or Airtel expect from it?
It's a very catch-22 situation, because if the market was overly large, and the terrestrial operators had some sort of a gauging of that size of the market, or a so-called addressable market, they would have by now gone and invested. I think that they have not invested thus far tells me that they are either tentative, or really they don't see the market to be that large. So once these terrestrial operators get there, I won't be surprised if they will also serve as the guys who will go and create that market for the terrestrial operators, because if the market really becomes of scale, then why wouldn't a terrestrial network put on their own network over there? So I think it's wait and watch for the moment. Nobody understands. It's difficult for us who live in these big cities and who are consumers to imagine that there are very large corporates who are waiting to be served there, can really pay a lot of money, and there's a lot of revenues and profits to be made. But the terrestrial networks have been, the network providers have been daft not to have encashed on that opportunity. So I think the jury is still out. We'll all figure out as time progresses and the services roll out.
Mr. Kapoor, the other question is, like we just mentioned, what kind of a tentative timeline can we work with in terms of actually being able to use these services? And secondly, can this give a material upside to ARPUs as far as, all of the incumbents are concerned? Because, that's been something that the industry has been asking for quite some time.
As far as the timelines are concerned, I think the technical availability of these services and a commercial application and rollout has already been demonstrated in some parts of the world. So I don't think it's a delay from the satellite service providers, or now even the terrestrial network providers, to partner with these guys. I think the delay is more on the part of regulation and government, where we need to have a firm policy on what happens to the spectrum, because it's a shared spectrum. If it's an administrative charge, then what is that administrative charge? Therefore, they can price it accordingly. And finally, what happens to things like lawful interception and all the controls that the government wants to build in to make sure the services are not, utilized by people who should not be utilizing them. So I think that's primarily the delay. Now, to come on to the timelines, I personally think the technology doesn't wait too long, and the life cycle of technologies have shortened. Therefore, to delay it for overly too long would be not pro for us. We should experiment with this early. Now, finally, coming on the ARPU question of yours, I think to begin with, at least in the first couple years, the ARPUs and the revenues from here will be very small and experimentational. And I don't think they will move the needle for either Airtel or Jio, at least in the next couple years.
Sanjay, always a pleasure listening to you. Thank you very much for joining in today. Get into a break. On the other side, we'll talk commodities. Manisha Gupta joins in on the other side.